against Napoleon. And I want to develop for you guys a picture very, very briefly. Oh, you can't hear me? Because I can understand maybe you can't hear me. Because my hearing aids have gone all haywire, so I don't really know the power of my own voice. Is it okay?
Yeah.
I can't really tell. So what I want to suggest to you guys is like this. The whole development of the Pnimis HaTorah, the way the Alter Rebbe gives it over, benoisef to the Arizal and the Baal Shem Tov, makes it that the whole inyan of Pnimis HaTorah, as brought down, especially by the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, comes through the Alter Rebbe. It becomes the property of every Yid throughout the world. It's no longer just a limited thing to a few special individuals, Makusha, to a few very elevated people, like it was in the time of the Arizal, even though the Alter Rebbe writes about the Arizal, that he already held mitzvah legali, says a Chochmah, but it was in a very limited sort of a way, even though they knew that that was going to spread, that wouldn't stop there. But the actual people who were the Makablim and the ones they taught it to were very elevated people. They were big Talmidei Chachamim, or people that were looking to reach perfection in service of Hashem. And this was the way, through the Arizal, that they saw what happened. The Baal Shem Tov said, no, the simple man is important. Just like the Talmid Chacham. And the Baal Shem Tov introduced the idea of everybody being important in his own way. And everybody being a key part of the whole Kavanah Sabriya, just like you're part of the Kavanah Sabriya. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Mem Aleph. If you look in Perek Mem Aleph in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that if you're not Mekabel Malchus Shamayim, you personally, then there's no Bria. It's all dependent on you. You know? And you're part of the cloud. Oh, that's a later issue. When you get to the etzem value of the Vaera of the individual, everything's dependent on you. Look it up. And that's why the Mashpiyim were very, very makpid in Lubavitch, that you have to learn Perek Mem Aleph. If you want to start anything in Avodas Hashem, you have to know Perek Mem Aleph first, because that's like everything's dependent on you. The Alter Rebbe said, everything's dependent on Ali Yidden. It's not just on a few people. You follow? So the Alter Rebbe was nefach to a figure, Klali, he called a general person in the whole descent of the Pnimis HaTorah from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And you should realize that in our generation, the Rebbe is like the fulfillment of that whole inyan, and therefore he reached the whole world. And there's almost no spot in the world that they don't talk about the Lubavitcher Rebbe or his or his. That's the Hachroza Yechia Melech HaMashiach, because there's no other explanation to what is really occurring and what is happening. So, what I want to suggest to you is that just like he became the Alter Rebbe, he became the figure Klali in the development of, and there was once a Maisa, I don't want to tell you too many Maisa because we're not going to learn anything, but when I was a young when I first came to so I got to know a person that probably you would know who it is. He's quite well known in America. But I'm not going to mention who it is. I don't want, to sort of make it personal. But I knew a person who later became very, in the ranks of Lubavitch, he became very important. But he was born from Polish Rebbe family. He was like a branch. His father was like a cousin or something of one of the big, very big Polish Rabbi. Yeah. And he came over to Lubavitch, and they were very upset, because they're very, they cling very much to their Rabbi. And so his father was very, very upset that this fellow went over to Lubavitch. It's a whole long story. If I were to tell you the whole story, I could sit there the whole day and night and tell you the whole. So I'm trying to make just a thumbnail of what actually happened. So in the end, he left Eretz Yisrael and he went to the Rebbe and he didn't come back. And he stayed by the Rebbe and he became the Rebbe. So a bocher, complete, like all the bocher. He changed his dress a bit, he put on. But the Rebbe didn't let him take off his long coat or anything. But the Rebbe said that's a in Kedusha and Mailin B'Koidish of Lo Moridim, the whole thing. So anyway, his father gets tremendously angry, at what's happening here, So he wrote the Rebbe a letter, his father. He wrote the Rebbe a letter, and he said in the letter very sharp things, And he said, how come you're holding my son? He said, my son belongs in the Chatres of Chassidus Pliny, and we are descendants, from Pliny, Rabbi Pliny and Rabbi Pliny. How come you're holding him like this? How dare you do this? Something to that. So the Rabbi answered him. The Rabbi said, first of all, I'm not holding him. I didn't bring him here, and I'm not holding him either. The Rabbi said, he wants to be here. So let's get that straight. I am not holding him. He came of his own free will, and he's staying of his own free will. Nobody has forced him. That's number one. And the Rabbi said, Basher, to all your kindness that he said. So the Rabbi said, what can I do? But I'm sitting on a chair. That's what the Rabbi said. The Rabbi said, I'm sitting on a chair. That chair, and the koyach of that chair, is from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Rabbi wrote a most amazing thing. And later, when people heard about this, people were fainting on the streets. They heard the Rebbe said about himself, he's sitting on the chair of Rabbi Shimon. He said, in other words, where do I get the chutzpah to be what I am, about it's the koyach of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So this father, he was a very intelligent, very learned individual. When he saw that, he said he came hands off, He dropped the whole. The Rabbi knew exactly what to say to him. And the Rabbi hit him, Mamisha, he called a left hook of a very, very high order, and so he dropped off. And he said, "Im Kain, it's all min Shemayim." He said, my son has to stay there in the Chabadska. And so they said, "What happened?" He said in Yiddish, "Ich lerne mit Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai." He said, "I'm going to start a struggle with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai." But he said, "Was ich lerne mit the Rashbi?" We see it's all sort of come down to the point where it's a general thing, And it was amazing too, in the Six-Day War, the Rabbi said not to leave the country. I was here at the time. And people were trying to get out, on any flight where they all sorts of people were trying to leave. All of a sudden the Rabbi said nobody should leave Eretz Yisrael, And so there were a whole group of Bocharim in Kfar Chabad, that they were from America, and their families wanted them to go home. And all of a sudden they all decided that they're not going, all the Bocharim. So some of the families didn't take it so good. And so there were also 2 or 3 Bocharim that they were Polishes, And they didn't come from Lubavitch background. So I happened to be in the Zohar. I wasn't working in the yeshiva then. But how I came into the Zohar, I don't remember. What I was doing in the Zohar of Tomchei Tumim at that day, I don't remember. But what happened was that there was one of the boys, he was a very good boy. He had an uncle who lived here in Erzor, and he was a, big star, ex-Chosid, I don't want to mention what it was, and he came into the Zal, and he went up to do you remember Rabbi Yankov Katz, the one who, he was the big mashpia, the big mashgiach in the yeshiva. Rav Katz, you guys don't know, Rav Katz was shown. He was very clever. So he was standing in the Zal, and I remember this fellow came in, he went up to Rav Katz, and he said, how come you dare hold my nephew here, he wants to get out. It's a terrible sakana, so he has to get out. So he said, how do you have the right to hold him here? So Rav Katz remained very calm, and he looked at him and he said, Ich halt him do. He said to him, he said, I'm holding him here. So the guy said, well, you're holding him here, you're not letting him go to the airport. He said, I'm not letting him go to the airport. He said, if he wants to go to the airport, as far as I'm concerned, he said, go to the airport. He said, why does he not want to go to the airport? Because he heard that the Rebbe said you don't need to go. That's why he's not going to the airport, not because of me. He held him, and he said, I'm holding him here. So I found in the airport. He said he doesn't want to go to the airport because of what the Rebbe said. You follow? Even mother, you got a struggle with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You follow? So the guy heard that, and he said, yeah, you have a point. And so they were standing right alongside us, Saeed from Russia. How do all these people have to come there? I don't know. It's all amazing. I brought him. There was an altar Russishi who was standing there, and he gave a whole marshal. And he said, Mimono, sure. He said, there's like a question. He said, if the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a Rebbe, so then he can take the achrayas, of saying what if he's not a Rebbe, how dare he say, And he said, Reb Shmuel Monk said the same thing to the altar Rebbe. He said, Reb Shmuel Monk said the altar Rebbe Monavshot. Yeah. He said, if you're a Rebbe, it won't do you any harm. If you're not a Rebbe, then it's... He said it very sharp, they don't print that in the Sforim. He was very sharp to the altar. He said, if you're not a Rebbe, then let him shoot you.
What right do you have to hold back the taste of Olam Hazeh?
No. It was very sharp Lashon. I know the actual Lashon. I don't even want to give it out, So, that's what this Russian fella said. He said, Mono, he said, Idder Rebbe, how does he take the achrayas to tell these people not to leave her? So, he said, if he's not a Rebbe, he's a very serious, not no, I don't want to use the word. He said, Elamai, he's a Rebbe, and therefore he's taking the achrayas. So when the guy heard this, he just backed off, And he said, well, can I at least see my nephew and wish him a bracha? Can I at least see my nephew for a little while? Rav Katz said to him, I'm not holding. He said, you want to go and speak to your nephew? He said, all right. I remember him saying that it was so beautiful the way he said, I'm holding you. That's exactly what the Rebbe said a few words earlier to this. The Rebbe said, I'm holding him here. He wants to be here. I'm holding him. And Vaera, as soon as he heard that it's Rabbi, he backed off. I have to start off with Rabbi. So what happened with the Alter Rebbe, that immediately the Alter Rebbe became the Klali, which gives over the whole Torah's Panimi, and the Torah, the Zohar Kodesh, with alle Meforshim and alle Pirushim, and the whole Kisvi Arizal and everything, it all comes over in a few words in the Kuti Torah, or in Tanya, even more, and most amazing Torah Hashem, Mamish Kipshut, comes over, that's meant to reach everybody. That's not a thing for a chug, you know. It's not for Chabadske. It's for everybody. So the Alter Rebbe automatically became the koyak of rabbinic Yiddishkeit, which would bear the banner for the whole world. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe and Napoleon met up like this, you know? And it was a clash. And you know the whole story. He tried to get to the Alter Rebbe's house and get something of the whole thing. And the Alter Rebbe made all sorts of amazing nevuahs and statements about him, the whole thing. And so it's brought down in certain Makoiros that the Alter Rebbe said to the Bezdin Shomaila that he wants to get rid of Napoleon, that he can't go on. We've got to do something to... and the reason is because the Alter Rebbe saw in Napoleon exactly what power he was. Exactly the same thing. What did Napoleon want to sell to the whole world? He wanted to sell what he called freedom. Yeah, freedom. But what did he mean by the word freedom? He meant do whatever you want. You understand? Just be a careful individual. Fill up all your tithers and do whatever is oila al adas shilcha. Do it, but just don't interfere with the other person, and particularly don't interfere with me. I'm the emperor, yeah? I'm the one. And he wanted to conquer the whole world, but you do it. He had in mind eventually to conquer. He already conquered Egypt and other places. He was doing it very, very masuda. You follow? He wanted to go. And why did he want to get into Russia? He knew it was a huge undertaking. Why did he want to get in charge of Moscow and Russia? Because he knew that with that he would have a tremendous hold over a large part of the world. You know? Because Russia's a huge place, and it's a very key leading political sort of quirk, particularly in those days. He wanted through that to spread out to the whole world. So the Alter Rebbe told the Bezdin Shomaila that he's prepared, if it's necessary, he's prepared to have Mesiras Nefesh. And it's mashma in those Makoiras that's why nobody anticipated that there was going to be a passing, that it had to happen, Rahman and the Son. The Alter Rebbe had to be prepared, and he was. He had to take the ultimate step of giving away everything, to stop Napoleon, to bring it down. And that's exactly what happened. So here we have, in Mitzrayim, we have exactly the same thing. Paro, he represented, or that koyak that says just do whatever you want, in a sort of a general way. It was a land of tivers and of terrible paganism and all sorts of things. Just do, whatever you want. Just be careful not to get in the way of anybody, or don't interfere with Paro. But just, that was the whole, what you might call, cultural aspect of the Shiur, of the enslavement. It wasn't just purely a physical thing of building sukkahs, what he called Pisayim Varamsi, but it was an inyan of that nature. Therefore, Hashem says, I'm going to fight Paro. And he said, therefore, I'm going to be Maksher, their slave, Paroi. So if we had the time, but unfortunately we don't, we do, but we don't, I would go into, there's a Rashi here, and Rashi deals very amazingly in detail with this whole issue that I'm giving you over. Suffice it to say, what Rashi basically says is that the reason I'm getting so involved here, and I'm, as it were, I'm smiting Vaera, and so much so, I'm going to harden his heart that he's not going to listen. So if you're hardening his heart, then that's playing it very hard. He's got no chance, no chance. So Rashi says two very profound things. He said, first of all, it's due to him. He's done things which have not been intended in the original Bris Ben Abbasorah. That's number one. And he said, number two, he said, what would save him, Cain, from my attacking him, if we were to do tshuva? So Rashi says a very amazing thing, and we don't mean any we don't mean any pagia in the code of the non-Jewish people. But Rashi says that the only way that Pari could remove all this from himself, which I'm going to do to him, I'm going to make him like a puppet in my hand. He's not going to have any, as it were, like the Rambam said. The Rambam writes of Mapuri, that Hashem took away his Bechira. And that's what Rashi says also. Basically, I'm going to take away his Bechira. If he were to do tshuva, then he would, as it were, he would put me in a situation where I'd have to accept him. Because ain't over him at Bifnei tshuva. So the Rashi hints that the Goyim cannot reach such a tshuva. The sort of tshuva that would save him from my hand, says Hashem, would mean he would have to do tshuva according to all the halachas of tshuva, all the ways of tshuva that the Rambam and all the great Sfarim, Adler Ein Sof Kimat point out to us. He said the Goyim are not able to do that. A Goy can't do that. And so it's a huge discussion amongst the great Meforshim in Rashi. What is that about? So I'm just going to give you a very quick picture, and that is that a Goy, in order to protect himself, and in order, as it were, to save his life and put it back in some sort of a order where he'll be able to go ahead and also be safe and maybe not do any damage, he can only he can alter the situation from now, and in the future he can maybe control himself in such a way that will make him more acceptable. But he can't get to the shorish and the ultimate root of everything he's been doing in such a way that, according to halacha, by a yid, if a yid does tshuva, he's got the ability to correct everything that was in the past. He uproots the whole past, and he makes better the future, and he makes the present absolute yichud with the Eivester. And that's like a three-winged, amazing act, the Indian of tshuva. A Goy doesn't have all that. He can be a little bit better, like I just pointed out, from moments there and further, in order to protect himself and whatever his interests or his, his authority grants him. If he's a leader, then he's got more say and more authority. So therefore Rashi says the Eivester knows that melechatchila, and therefore he's not waiting for him to do tshuva, because even if he does, it's not going to help him for all that he's done in the past and the whole spiritual war that he's made against the Yidden. If he were a Yid, he would be able to do tshuva like that. And therefore they say even some of the big Rishonim in Israel, Menashe and others, they did tshuva and they saved themselves. Yeah, it's much that they even got Ilam Haba. Someone. So Rashi says that Hashem knows that. Therefore Hashem says it's better that he will make hard his heart, and he will move him like a puppet, and then he will bring on him all this punishment for the sake of the Yid. That ultimately there's nothing really to hope out of the Goyim. all the things that he does in the world to the Goyim are for the sake of the Yidden. And the whole Esa Markers with everything is not for Pari. He's not going to learn anything. It's only for Pari in the sense that we're giving him a very severe schmiss, which is due to him for all he's done. And in the end, he'll be knocked down, yeah, and he'll lose all of that. But that's all, like a chitzonius, an outside thing. Although he doesn't have the ability to correct everything he did before. And why is Hashem giving him all this? Hashem could have just, in some secret way got rid of Paro, or he could have finished him from the point of view of his authority. He could have made that he fell down from his throne, or who knows what. Yeah. Why did Hashem make all these? Because he wants the Yidden should learn. Yeah? And if you look carefully, you'll see that Rashi says it clearly that Hashem made all the Eser Makis not for the Mitzrayim, not because he wanted to punish, but he could have done it in many ways. He did it for the sake of the Yidden. Some of the other great, early period commentators like the Ramban, he says Mamishkach, but he just writes it differently. And his approach is ever so slightly different than Rashi, but that's the main basic point. And he says for the first 5 markers, Pari made his own heart. But the Rebbe learns in Rashi, that Rashi would learn he made his heart hard right from the very beginning, even though it's not apparent like that in the Psukim. But according to the Ramban and the Rambam also, they say the first 5 markers he made his own heart hard. And so after that, Hashem gave him power to put up with them, because Hashem didn't want him to do tshuva just because of the markers. Yeah, that's the way they learned it. And then Hashem was disappointed that he didn't do tshuva. So Rashi doesn't learn that way according to the Rebbe. Rashi learns that right from the beginning Hashem didn't wait for him to do Emes Tshuka. Even if he would have, it wouldn't have helped it anyway. That's a big difference. But the main point of the Ramban, what's all this for? In order that the Yidden should do tshuva. The whole thing is that the Yidden should do the tshuva, not Pari. And the Sapona writes Mamish Mafurish. Yeah. And so if you look into all the great authorities, they all learn that all this is happening for the sake of the Yidden. And why is there 10 marquis? Because there's 10 spheres and they affect the world in 10 very general ways. So Hashem wanted to alter through the Indian of Yidden, realizing just how much Hashem is part of everything, and they have to do tshuva in order to link up with him. Hashem wanted to go through all the different aspects of the creation, therefore works through the whole Esa spirit. And then the Alter Rebbe writes in Torah that the only way to break the ultimate klippa of Pari is through Esa Makis. And that's a whole big discussion in its own right. But basically, he's saying what I just pointed out now. Why do you have to have Esa? Because you have to break the klippa of the Mitzrayim. They have a hold of all the aspects of the world. And that's what the Medrash says, that Pari was a shoylet b'kippah. He was at the top of the world, and he was running the whole. All the countries in the world at that time were all affected by the Mitzrayim. The whole culture and everything in the Mitzrayim was affecting. And even later, the development of the Babylonians and all that, much of it was built on the type of thing that the Mitzrayim brought into the world. So therefore you have this unbelievable coil, which it had to call it, it embraced the whole existing culture and bria, the whole etyminion of the creation. Therefore it had to be 10, because the world divides itself basically into these 10 different aspects. Of Amela, here we have this amazing struggle. So what I want to explain to you is that's what happened with the Alter Rebbe with Napoleon. It was like a whole thing that the world had to go through. And take a look at what happened to Napoleon. There's a lot of different opinions whether he was a tippish and he was just about time, or he was really a genius. There's different opinions in the great historians about that. Yeah.